About a year ago, I made an unsponsored video about a pretty cool open source e-ink dashboard I had purchased called Terminal. And it seems that my enthusiasm was shared, as that video now has nearly 1 million views. And what's more, through my affiliate link that I only added after the fact, more than 8,100 units have been sold, generating well over $1 million in revenue for the company. In short, I wasn't alone. The product resonated with y'all too. Now, the thrust of that original video was pretty clear. This is a genuinely cool product from a seemingly good company, but it's early days. They had made a lot of promises, open source hardware guides, a plugin marketplace, self-hosted server options, and whether any of that would come to fruition remained to be seen. Fast forward to a few months ago, Ryan, Terminal CEO, reaches out and he says, "There's a new model, the Terminal X, with a bigger screen, better hardware, the works. Would you be interested in taking a look at it?" My response, of course, was, "Yeah, probably, but not before verifying that Terminal actually did what they said they'd do." See, we use our Terminal every single day. It's in the kitchen, showing our family calendar, weather from our home weather station, and photos of my daughter. My wife has become an unexpected, genuine fan of it. But I hadn't really kept up with the broader development. I knew what our device did for us, but I didn't know if the promises had materialized for everybody else. What they've done has frankly surprised me, maybe even shocked me. I've been doing this shtick for nearly 20 years, and I have never seen a company follow through this thoroughly, this quickly. So let me share what I've discovered. And yeah, this video is not sponsored either. For those who missed the original, Terminal is a battery-powered e-ink display. There's literally a display, a battery, and a controller. It lasts months between charges. It wakes up at whatever interval you specify, connects to Wi-Fi, and then sends a request to a web server for a bitmapped image. Then it renders it on the e-paper display and goes back to sleep. There's no touchscreen, there's no push requests. This is the whole device, really simple. The software is where the magic lives. It's a web dashboard where you build a playlist of plugins, Google Calendar, weather, YouTube Analytics, to-do list, photos, whatever, and you schedule them to rotate throughout the day. You can even group specific plugins into mashups to display multiple things at once, like I've done here. The firmware is open source under GPL 3, and the original cost $120 at the time of my review. Now it costs $140. The pitch really hasn't changed though. It was to sell a piece of hardware at frankly a slightly elevated price, but without scummy monetization strategies. This is not a skylight trying to sell you a $50 a year subscription on a 5-year-old Android tablet. It is not an ad-riddled Amazon Echo show. It's just a simple e-ink screen that does as much or as little as you want with as much or as little effort as you want to give it. Go watch the original video if you need a refresher. The link is available here, because what we're going to do now is an accountability check. I said specific things in that video based on specific commitments that Terminal have made, and let's see what they've actually shipped. First up, open hardware and the ability to bring your own device. In the original video, I noted that because the firmware was open source and none of the components were proprietary, you could theoretically build your own terminal with the same components, but in the same way that you can theoretically build your own car engine. That is to say, not easily and not without expertise. Their documentation heavily suggested that a hardware build guide was soon coming, but at the time of my video, it hadn't arrived. I said it was kind of beyond me why a for-profit company would help you build a competitor to their own product, especially for less money, and I suspected that the guide would never come. But I was wrong, because not only did they do it, they went dramatically further than they ever promised, and way further than a build guide. Terminal now officially supports running their platform on Kindle, Nook, Android tablets, iPads, Kobo e-readers, Raspberry Pis, and third-party e-ink displays like the tiny XT Ink X4 I showed in a prior gift guide. But it also extends to open hardware, using various e-ink panels and microcontrollers. There's even a partnership with Seed Studio selling an official 7.5-inch DIY kit with an ESP32S3 board, the same thing that's in here, a battery, and an e-ink panel for $97 total, including the software license, nearly $40 less than Terminal's own device. And Terminal helped co-develop it. Like, what? This is a company actively helping you spend less money on a product that competes with their own. They didn't just write a build guide, they made their platform hardware agnostic. You can basically run Terminal on anything with a screen and Wi-Fi. The process of getting the terminal firmware onto your device obviously depends based on the device you're using. In the case of this, the X2 E-Ink X4, it's an ESP32-based microprocessor, and so it's the same process as the real terminal. You just flash it via USB serial inside of Google Chrome, and you're done. That's it. In the case of something like this, the Seed Studio, it's a little more involved because, well, you have to actually make the product. So I've got an E-Ink display here, which is this is still so crazy to me that this is even like a possible technology. I've got a static image. It's reflective on the back. It's so cool. And I got my 3D printed case here. I think I can just shove that down in, peel this protective layer off. And now all I need is my main board, which same deal here, ESP32. I think it comes pre-flashed, but if it doesn't, I'll just flash it through Chrome. Same as this, same as the real terminal, easy. And then we've got the battery. So I'll take this, plop this right here, and plug it in. Or maybe the battery's dead. I have to charge it. Oh, I found the problem. There's a power switch. So we'll move that to on. Yep, that'll do it. That's the reason. There it is. Terminal, connect. Okay, here we go. And now we give it our Wi-Fi credentials. Connect. And it is connecting, done. But these are both relatively new devices, and they're running an ESP32, the same hardware that's inside the terminal itself. So let's do something different, like an Amazon Kindle. This is something that we will need to jailbreak in order to change the firmware on, but apparently it's relatively easy. And there's a whole guide here, so let's start at the top. We're going to utilize the winter break jailbreak. Okay, all right. USB drive mode, and does it show up on my Mac? It does, which is great. That's not a guarantee, apparently. Updating the store experience. I don't know that's what, look at that. Semi-persistent app loader, wow. The annoying WAF launcher, winter break. Let's tap it. Nice Isaac Asimov quote, and wow, we've got a console showing here. And update your Kindle. That's kind of terrifying. Oh yeah, look at that. Whoa, that's definitely not a Kindle. Running hotfix installer. So then I have to install KUAL and MRPI. I do not know what those mean. Qual Merpy. And run MRPI by typing into the search bar, what the freak? Semicolon log. Oh, I didn't follow the instructions. Done, restarting UI. Okay. Now I'm feeling good. It's there. So now what we have to do is set our device model to Kindle inside of the terminal account. Okay, so device is successfully linked. Device model, I'm gonna come in here and I am going to go to Amazon Kindle. Kindle 2024, Kindle Voyage, there it is, okay. And then I push save. Nice. All right, here's the moment of truth. Qual, terminal, start terminal, and hey. Now, cynically, I know what you might be thinking. Well, it's obvious why Terminal is letting you do this on more and more devices, because they require you purchase a $50 license, and every time you give them $50 in exchange for nothing, free money. But that's not really true. You see, in my original video, I praised the fact that Terminal had released a basic Sinatra server and community Docker boilerplate, meaning that you could theoretically run your own server with zero involvement from or money to Terminal. But the options were frankly, realistically, a bit thin, and they required real technical chops. Well, not anymore. Now there are multiple, full-blown self-hosted server implementations in PHP, Node, Python, Ruby, Elixir, and more, I think. Now, a couple of these versions are fully volunteer-driven, and their flagship open-source server, codenamed Terminus, has a dedicated full-time team member at Terminal working on it. This is a massive expansion from the original, oh, here's a basic server you can spin up if you want, to here is a menu of production-ready self-hosted options in whatever language you prefer, with guides on how to deploy them if you don't know how. It's one thing to open source your code. It's a whole different thing to publish guides on how to not be given money. And remember that controversial $20 developer API key I defended in the original video? The one where you had to pay them to develop your own plugins because open source doesn't mean free? Well, it still exists, but the context around it has completely changed, because with these self-hosted servers and the BYOD ecosystem with open source firmware, you can now run and build the entire terminal experience without paying them a cent, and pretty easily too. That $50 bring your own device fee, that's only if you want to use their servers. That $20 API fee, that's only if you develop plugins to run on their servers. Both of them are paying for the convenience of using their hosted infrastructure, which has long-term implication and cost, but they're not charging you for the permission to participate. That's free of charge if you've got the gumption to do so. And again, it's pretty easy to do. They even tell you how to do it. So why would they do this? Well, the plugin ecosystem. I noted about 60 native plugins existed last year when I made my video, with a really limited selection of third-party ones. At the time, Terminal was talking about launching a marketplace for allowing people to host their own paid plugins. Today, there are now over 850 plugins and recipes, 90% of them being community built. And guess what? They're all free. The marketplace never really materialized because I think they came about something more interesting, a creator fund. Terminal takes a percentage of revenue from those developer edition API fees and from the bring your own device charge, from the Clarity Kit upgrades and a couple of other areas, and they distribute it directly to people who build stuff for their platform. Plugin authors, translators, 3D mount designers, firmware contributors, anybody adding value gets paid proportionally based on install counts, playlist presence, and API impressions. Now, the first payout was about $15,000, split 70-30 between plugin authors and strategic contributors, and monthly payouts have continued since. They even published transparency reports. In a moment where making money online is getting increasingly more difficult across basically every platform, you can earn real money writing HTML and CSS for terminal plugins, and that's genuinely novel in a vibe coding era where you don't even really have to write it. It creates this flywheel, right? More plugins attract more users. More users generate more revenue. More revenue goes back to creators, and so on. And I'm not going to attribute this altruism to the folks at Terminal. I don't think it's altruistic. I think they just realize that there is a symbiotic exchange. They win when they don't exploit their customers, and even non-customers. And this anti-status quo doesn't stop there. I specifically complained in my original review that the Terminal branding on the front was one of my few hardware gripes. Well, they addressed it, not just in hardware with the Terminal X, which has no front logo, but they've also fixed it in software with Tailor, which lets you flash the firmware with whatever branding you want for free. No terminal in sight. Terminal's framework, a UI toolkit designed to make e-ink displays look dramatically better, is source available now and will be fully open source soon. And they published what they call the Unbrickable Pledge, a Wayback Machine archived commitment to release the entire core web application source code if the company ever becomes insolvent. Nice. Is it legally enforceable? Probably not. There's no escrow, no contractual trigger, but given that they've already open sourced the firmware, the clients, the self-hosting tools, there isn't really much left behind the curtain anyway, other than that and a PCB design using commodity parts that you can copy with your eyeballs. And, well, I guess the injection molded case. Big whoop. In short, your terminal isn't becoming a paperweight even if the company disappears tomorrow. The most impressive thing to me, however, is the technical stuff regarding these e-paper displays. E-ink's most universal complaint is the ugly black and white screen flash on every refresh. It's how the e-ink technology has worked for a number of decades, and users hate it but accept it as inherent to the technology. Some high-end e-readers don't require a full flash now, but you have nasty ghosting, and with larger images, it looks terrible. After a community member pointed out the firmware inefficiencies that Terminal had, Terminal brought in Larry Bank, a well-known embedded display expert, and within a month shipped zero flicker refresh for all 1-bit e-paper displays. The device just updates now, smoothly. They open sourced the solution too, so anybody using similar e-paper panels can benefit, and that alone would be noteworthy, but what they did next is what is genuinely wild. 2-bit grayscale on 1-bit hardware. Okay, so the original Terminus display is rated by the supplier as a 1-bit black and white display only. That's what the datasheet says. That's what every other company has accepted using these panels. But Terminal rewrote the lookup tables inside the display panels themselves to unlock 4 levels of grayscale on hardware that was never designed to support it, essentially hacking the panel's own internal driving waveforms to produce intermediate gray values between pure black and pure white. The calendar plugin, for example, now has subtle shading, depth, and visual hierarchy instead of harsh black and white rendering. The before and after is striking. They're still fine-tuning temperature compensation since grayscale performance kind of varies slightly across displays and ambient temperatures, but it's already live for custom images and will automatically roll out to native plugins and recipes for all Terminal owners soon. This is the kind of thing that makes you go, wait, you can do that? And while source is available now, they're going to open source that too, so everybody else can use it. And that brings us to the new Terminal X. The original's weakness, in my opinion, was always the hardware. I mean, you had the simple injection molded case, you had the branding on the front, the small 7.5-inch screen, limited mounting options. It just kind of felt like a hobbyist weekend project, because it kind of was. Well, the X doesn't feel like that. This feels like a product. It's got a display that is 10.3 inches, 1872 by 1404, giving you 227 pixels per inch at 16 level grayscale. This is a real e-ink high density panel, like what you'd find in a premium e-reader, with full refresh in under 1.2 seconds and partial refresh in just 200 milliseconds. If it's not loading content, which it is right now. So let's see, here we go. Wow, amazing. The higher resolution and native grayscale support makes photos look genuinely great. Not quite the same lo-fi charm as the 1-bit originals, but they also no longer look like abstract art where you're like, well, yeah, I can kind of tell that's a person. Like, this is clearly my cat. Look how majestic he is. The 4:3 aspect ratio is also a massive improvement over the original's 16:9. And while not every plugin is optimized for the new layout yet, the newer ones support dynamic resizing, so the ecosystem will catch up really, really quickly. There is, as I mentioned, no Terminal branding on the front. Finally. And the enclosure comes in 6 finishes. I've got this cool looking polycarbonate transparent for showing off, but frankly, sage would probably be my preference. This isn't going to be approved by the wife to live in the kitchen, I don't think. And the whole thing is water resistant with IP65 certification pending, made possible by silicone gaskets and this neat little spring-loaded pogo pin charging system. And that's the trade-off, I guess. There is no USB-C charging directly on device anymore. There is an embedded N52 magnet for flush fridge mounting, though. I do wish it was a little bit stronger, or that the back was grippier. It's kind of easy to bump and make droopy. Shear strength is a heck of a thing. And the magnetic puck interfaces with, well, all of the stands and holders. And it even passes data, which means that this thing is modular and could be expanded with planned accessories that Terminal has already announced, like PoE and environmental sensors, relay docks. That said, this puck does stick out quite a bit, which with the wall mount I think is a real miss. Then again, Terminal is Terminal, so that's probably where the modding and third-party scene will come in to fix everything that, well, I don't like. Internally, the X runs a dual ESP32 microcontroller setup, one of which brings 5 GHz Wi-Fi support alongside an external antenna here for better range. See how neat this clear case is for demonstration? The battery is 6,000 milliamp hours by default, but upgradable to 12,000 milliamp hours that I have pictured here for just $10 extra, which pushes battery life to about 6 months. There is an accelerometer that is not currently working, but is said to bring future auto orientation, and there's even a built-in temperature sensor. But my favorite hardware upgrade is the gesture and touch area along this bottom edge, a massive improvement over the single button buried on the back of the original. You tap it to skip to the next screen. There you go. touch sensors. They're not perfect. You swipe left and right to go between screens already cached in memory, and if you hold it for half a second, you can enter OTG mode, which, yes, lets you charge other devices off of your terminal as a power bank. And that's actually a pretty genuinely handy party trick when you're rocking a nearly 50 watt-hour battery cell inside of this device. Everything the original does, the Terminal X does better. It feels more like a finished product than a weekend project. But it's kept the same spirit alive when you can open it up with Torx screws at the back, you can modify it, you can run your own server on it, you can do whatever you want with it. And at $219, it's not exactly cheap, but few 10-inch e-ink screens are. And this is a dramatically better product than the original for just an $80 premium. I think it's a no-brainer if you're gonna get one of these at all. So here's the bigger picture. This is a story about a company that did what they said they'd do. That sentence should sound unremarkable, but in consumer tech, it's genuinely rare, especially from a small independent company navigating growth, either because they don't survive or because they're trying not to die and end up deprioritizing the things that made them compelling to begin with. Terminal is doing something different. Not out of charity, make no mistake, they are clearly making money and growing, but out of a business model that genuinely aligns with its users' interests. When Terminal wins, users win, and vice versa. When users contribute, they get paid. When the company dies, if it ever dies, hopefully it won't, your device can keep working. That's how this stuff should go. The Terminal X is the hardware that the original probably should have been, but couldn't afford to be. The software platform is now the thing that I hoped it would become, and the community around it has grown into something that I did not anticipate, but is likely the reason that this is the success that it is. Terminal has earned a right to a follow-up on this channel, which is not something I do often, but they've earned the right to have me say, yeah, I think these are some of the good ones. This video was not sponsored by Terminal, yet again, but if you do want to buy a Terminal X, please do so with my affiliate link down below. You save a little bit of money, and I make a little bit of money in return. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.